Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for book nerds and storytellers who just don't sleep. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over books and the craft of writing them. This week, we're discussing chapters 1 through 10 of Alicia Jasinska's This Fatal Kiss. This Fatal Kiss publishes September 10th, 2024, and we are recording way back at the end of June, so you guys won't get to hear it for a while. All right, my little Libernauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into This Fatal Kiss. Okay, discussion time. Alright. So immediately from Gisela and Kajik, right? Because there's like a whole pronunciation guide at the beginning.
Kajik and Kajik, yeah. And Gisela. Gisela,
like more emphasis on the G, a soft G. So
soft G, yeah.
So almost like a French Gisela.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close to that.
So Gisela and Kajik, their immediate interaction, I'm like, oh, enemies to lovers. Like the chemist, if you don't, I immediately have shipped it, and I will play Maggie and write fan fiction, and these two will be together, and that's the end of that. That just came off so strong, but
so strong.
I want to start by talking about Wojciech, actually, the water goblin, and his collection of souls in overturned teacups.
That's the life I want to lead. I want souls in overturned teacups. That is my life's goal.
Wojciech gives me such Labyrinth, Goblin King meets like not quite Mad Hatter, but something similar,
like Ursula.
Goblin. Yeah, like Ursula kind of vibes. It's spooky, and he's definitely got a lot of shit hidden under his sleeves or his teacups, I guess. And I'm just immediately distrustful of him.
Yes. I wonder how he's going to play out with those souls, right? Because we know that the Rusauki and the Drowners, there is a word for the Drowners, I can't pronounce it, but it was the females who die a horrible drowning death in or near the water turn into the water nymphs, which are the Rusauki, and the men turn into drowners. And then they spend their afterlife. Yeah, then they spend their afterlife just drowning people, like you do. But my question is, because now they are undead, are their souls in those teacups?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought of that.
That's what I was thinking. Because, I mean, I was thinking because, you said Gisela?
Gisela, yeah.
Gisela. So, Gisela wants to not be dead. And you're talking about these girls who have died, and you're like, oh, well, if all the souls go to heaven and hell in this book, like, where are their souls? And then it hit me. I was like, is it the teacups? It's gotta be the teacups.
And he's got a lot, and it like references throughout this whole section that all of the nymphs and all of the drowners constantly lure townspeople and tourists, right? Because Lesnovoda is a spa town, and so they see a lot of tourists, and so they just lure a bunch of people to their watery death. And some of them become Rusauki, like Tamara or Tamara. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that name either. Who is the girl that Gisela shows around in the first chapter, which is how we get to see and learn about the world a little, which I didn't personally love because it's got that whole, as you well know, kind of quality to it. But like, what is he doing with all these souls? Like, is he just collecting them? Because that's kind of weird.
I mean, you can't have a tea party with them.
You can't. And we've...
Because he said, because the narration mentioned that the only person that has more human souls in their possession is the Seatsar.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just like a power thing. Like there was also another point during one of the later chapters where I think it was Kajik's point of view where he equates Wojciech and Leszek to gods. They were formerly worshipped as gods. Perhaps that's what they're trying to reclaim.
Yeah,
What with
there's also
Christianity coming in.
Yeah, there's also a part when he talks about them being gods that there was a suspicion that the water goblins were keeping the food going and like the water flowing through Lesnavoda when the war came through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's one line. It's very subtle, but it was it was when he was talking about like the things that his babsha, his grandmother, was telling him, and babsha was like, sure, the water goblin helped us." Like, cranky old lady, it's fine. You sound sassy. But yeah, I'm very focused on these teacups. I want to know what's going on with them. I thought it was a very unique piece of world building, and like in the first chapter, that's what I latched onto the most, because then she goes around and she's showing Tamara the town and explaining the world, and I like, as a writer, I don't love that. I don't feel like that's strong world building, like, because it tells us the world, it doesn't really show us the world. And a lot of the other things in it absolutely show us, right? Like after Gazella gets captured, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit, and she's drying out. Like we get to see her be worried about that, as opposed to being like, oh, don't forget, we can't go too far. Oh, right, we also can't stay out here too long. Like,
see, that to me kind of more read as trying to show that she thinks of them as prisoners. They can't go too far. They're tied to this river, to the water, to specifically Wojciech's water.
Yes.
But I do kind of agree that I feel the world building is not lacking, but the major question that I've had throughout these all of the chapters that we've read so far is, what time period is it?
Yes.
Because the mention of tourist, I was like, oh, that's a very modern word for a fantasy. And
but then they come in on trains.
They come in on trains, and then later there's a bus that's mentioned.
Yeah.
And Gisela specifically mentions old world architecture, which is, like 12th, 13th century buildings that would have existed in, assumingly in fantasy Poland, at the and is it just like a tourist town where it's recreating the old world architecture, or is it like actually like just recently, like, considered old world?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that, like, this, you said this is a fantasy world, but in our world, there's towns, like, even in just a state over, that have very old century architecture, and they set up things so that it does become a tourist trap.
Yeah.
And I feel that's in probably almost every country, that they have some place that kept their architecture throughout the years and just kept, touching them up, making sure that they were repaired, in that same style. And years and years and years later, even in our modern times, people go to these places to see that architecture and to...
Looking at you, Colonial Williamsburg.
Right? And so, I mean, this fantasy world could just be that. Like, this town has kept their architecture, and then they decided that people were, oh, this is cute, this is really cool. And then they set up a spa, and they set up a little bakery, and then people just came flooding in.
They set up magical spas. Can we talk about the magical spas? That each one is named after one of the saints, and there's one that makes you happy, there's one that increases like the spirit's power. They talked about the other ones, I don't quite remember, but like,
I think one of them was like your beauty is enhanced or something. You feel extra restful.
Yeah, like, I would like to go to these spas. They sound amazing.
Yes, they do.
Get a full 8 hours of rest just by hanging out in the pond for 20 minutes.
That would be amazing.
And it kind of like this discussion reminds me of those questions that people ask. It's like, if you could live in one book world, which one would it be? And it's kind of like I kind of want to get to the end of this book to figure out if I really do want to live here. But so far, it's very tempting.
Right? Risk of getting lured to my death by really cute spirits, but Bartown.
Right. Let's see what happens with the spirits first, and and then maybe you never know. Things could change, and it could just be like, oh, humans and spirits work together by the end of the book. And if that's the case, just sign me up. Get me into that book world.
Right? I love those posts, by the way, that are like, what book world would you like to live in? And I'm like, I read dystopian fantasy. Yeah. I don't want to be in these worlds. I would like to talk about how the water nymphs get made. They specifically they drown or they have a violent death near the water.
Yes.
And there's a scene where after Gisela escapes and is rescued, kind of something we'll get to later, she goes back to all the water nymphs and she's like, you guys suck. You didn't come to get me. But they're all kind of like afterwards they all start telling stories about how they drowned. And that's when Gisela notes that she doesn't remember how she died. And she's kind of thankful for it because some of the stories involve, I'll just say a little spoiler warning, maybe skip ahead 5 seconds from right about here. They involve rape and torture and murder. They're very, very violent deaths. But some of them are just like, oh, I stepped into the water and I drowned. But in that first chapter, Gisela, admits to having been suicidal while she was alive.
Mm-hmm.
I have it written down. It's the whole being an undead spirit was so not the point. The point was she was angry. She wanted her life back. She wanted what had been stolen from her, which was ironic, really, because when she had been alive, Gisela hadn't been all that attached to being alive. She was prone to bouts of melancholy and was regularly overwhelmed by dark and negative thoughts. How many times had she daydreamed about never waking up again? How many times had she thought, wouldn't it be easier if I just weren't here? And now she's on a quest to kiss a guy and be alive again because she's realized she's like, well, maybe I don't want to actually be dead. I just really wanted a very long nap. And I thought that was very interesting because as somebody who has suicidal ideation, a lot of that is not, I want to harm myself. A lot of it is, I want to go to bed and just be asleep for a very long time.
I totally agree. It's kind of like I want to be dead without being dead.
Yes.
I just kind of want to take a break and have people, not be near me.
Yep. Yeah, that's all I want. Just a long, extended, coma-like nap. And when I wake up, everything that is bothering me should be fixed. Is that too much to ask for? I don't think that it is.
One can only hope.
But I also think, if her suicidal ideation continued with her into her undeadness, that's like a special kind of hell that she wants to die and now she will live eternally.
Yeah, that would kind of be crazy.
Yeah.
To back it up and to kind of go back to maybe a more positive type of talking, when she does come back and her and the other water nymphs are talking and she shows up, they're like, oh, we missed you, and she's just like, yeah, you didn't show it because you didn't come looking for me. Like, I just love the humor in this book, especially Gisela's, because she is just, I think, everything. Like, she makes like weird situations just funny.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She's got some real Marlowe energy to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think she'll also be high at the end of the book?
No, but I'm gonna I'm going to place bets right now that as a water nymph, she's going to start a fire like Marlo. I don't know how, but she's going to do it.
All right. All right.
My bet is more that I think, despite getting both of these pretty boys to fall in love with her and kiss her and each other, she's not going to be able to become human just because Wojciech still has her soul in a teacup. And he's not going to want to let her go.
All right. My bet is that of the two guys, it's actually going to be Kajik. And I'm going to back this up with the fact that Kajik has a different version of the tale of the water nymph falling in love, right? So Gisella's version of it is that, if you can get a mortal to fall in love with you and kiss you, then you can become human again. And the tale that Zuzana, that Kajik's cousin, tells is that there is a monk that puts his rosary onto the nymph and promises to marry her. And so my bet is that Kajik is going to wind up being the one that can make her human again. But I absolutely agree with Maggie that Wojciech's going to come in and ruin it and just be like, teacups for both of you.
Because the part where Kajik was kind of talking about the part of the story that he knows with the monk, there was a paragraph where he was saying, how could someone have turned their back on their faith for one of these monsters? Or something akin to that. And that's what really oh yeah, he's probably going to have to be the one.
That's what I'm saying. That's just based on how character arcs should work. He's going to come into the story with a lot of prejudice and he's going to leave it being a better man. And if he doesn't, I'm going to come into this story and beat him with a teacup. And then I'm going to go to one of these beautiful spas.
Don't ruin a perfectly good teacup, Jessica.
We have to talk about Kajik and Gisela together.
Perfect energy.
Perfect energy. They come up the first time that we see Kajik see Gisela in town, he yells at her, "How many times do I have to send you back to your river, demon?" And I was just like, #best pickup line. And even while he's chasing her, she's like, "Oh, he is cute. He's surprisingly pretty and delicate and intense." I'm like, girl, he wants to kill you. What?
I mean, she's just so flirtatious. And if I could just, I totally forgot what I wanted to say, and now I remember. So if we could back it up, I also want to point out that Gisela's whole thing with, if I can get a human to fall in love with me and kiss me, I can become human again. But if you notice in the book, in every time she mentioned it, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll flirt a little, and then they'll kiss me, and then I'll turn into human." Like, that's not love.
Yeah.
Like, flirting for a couple minutes and then them kissing you doesn't mean that you're going to turn into a human, because it doesn't mean that they love you.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a disappointment somewhere too.
Yes. I feel like that's probably going to happen with Alexei, which is the guy that they both like. I feel like he's going to kiss her and she's going to be like, "I'm still undead." What? Like, I'm waiting for that.
Mm-hmm.
Then Kajik captures her, right? He ties his rosary around her hands and drags her to his house and then puts her in the chalk circle so she can't get out. And she just sits there whining the entire time to the point that he's got a migraine. and he's like, "I just need a minute. One goddamn minute. I just need a minute, please."
And he goes to exorcise her and his magic fails.
Yeah. And
then he's just like, it's got to be the migraine.
Yeah.
That's why it's not working.
My note there, I was like, it's okay, Kajik, it happens to a lot of guys.
To me, that 100% rang of soulmateism. It was the gods being like, no, you don't want to strike her down. That's gonna be your wife or partner or however they're all gonna end up, because it is a polyamorous couple.
Yes,
dated
in the book.
This is their version of
fated mates, plural, the three of them together. Oh, the lines there are great too. Like, it's like I didn't realize you were so desperate for my company that you'd actually kidnap me. And he deadpans to her, "Yes, I realized I couldn't possibly live without you." Like, their humor going back and forth is great, like Katie said earlier, you know.
It's such a married couple energy vibe.
Yes. There's also a great bit of world building dump here from Khajiit about his powers while he's kind of figuring out why he can't zap her out of existence. You know, we learn that his powers specifically come from God, but it resembles witchcraft, and then we kind of learn how he does it, and he's basically a God-blessed swamp witch.
See, I was thinking of him the entire time as a pathetic paladin.
A pathetic paladin.
I don't know why the pathetic was there, but I don't know. He just gives pathetic vibes.
He does.
He does give pathetic vibes.
Because it's mentioned he has no friends, even though he's grown up in this town and went to school with everyone. He's got no friends.
But he also looks down on the people that he's in town with, right? He's like, "Ugh, nobody I graduated with could do this, and they're not smart." He's constantly degrading them. And he also doesn't try to sneakily deal with the other world. You know, he's like outright yelling at spirits and chasing things that other people can't see through town. So
it's giving high school weeaboo trying to Naruto run down the hall.
It really is. It really is. Hashtag Khajiit is a weeb.
I want to, just for a second, bring up the mysterious stranger that she meets when she is captured by Khajiit, right?
Yeah.
Comes into the house. And how I think it was also the guy that was kind of like a throwaway line when she's in line trying to Assassin's Creed her way through that crowd so that Khajiit doesn't find people. Her. Yeah. Because in that particular scene at the market, she's trying to look around this tall kid, right? And he's got blonde hair, and she's trying to see, but she gets like this feeling of fear, right? Like she kind of stumbles back because something about this guy in front of her makes her uneasy, right? And that's how Khajiit finds her. And then later when he comes into the house where she's trapped in a chalk circle essentially and can't get out, he's also described as having honey-hued hair, right?
And then he's got heterochromic eyes.
Yes. And she ends up having an animal instinct to shrink herself to be as small and inconspicuous as possible, because she's got this sort of instinctual fear of him approaching, and whether or not that's actually animal instinct or something that she's writing away as animal instinct and she's actually scared of him, I'm wondering if he's a part of her death story.
Yes. And I think that especially about the guy in the market, but I think the guy that rescued her from Khajiit's place is Alexei, who is the guy that she...
Yes.
Yeah.
But Maggie's saying that
I'm saying
it's the same market is Alexei.
Yeah.
Plus, Maggie, to add to that, when she finds out that this mystery man's family owns that spa, and she goes to the spa, she has this like fear of going into it, and she's like, maybe I shouldn't do this, and she pushes through that to go in. So that adds to that, absolutely. And I feel that there's something about him that, she's like, oh yeah, he's so kind-hearted and so nice, and I want him. It's also like, but girl, you have this gut feeling. So I don't know if this is the person they're going to end up with together, because I just have this feeling that he's not going to be
a good person.
Yeah, it's giving very sus vibes just every time that he's on screen, and that's kind of what I want to keep reading, because it's revealed, in chapter 10 that guy, is Alexei, and it's the same guy that they're crushing on, and clearly it's setting up for them being a little polycule right there.
Yes. I love it. But for the market, I thought the guy in the market was a different guy. I don't think that guy is Alexi.
Well, we don't know.
We didn't get a lot of detail about that guy in the market.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about those fear moments for just a second, because she has a couple of them, and not only when she's going into the spa, but also when she comes back to the river with all the rest of the nymphs and she falls into the water and she freaks out, right? And she's just like, oh my god, I'm drowning, wait a minute, I can breathe underwater. And then they pull her out and she's still like calming down, and she's digging her nails into her palms to try and calm down and just like recalibrate herself into the world. And so although she doesn't remember her death, the trauma of it is still very clearly there. And I'm curious. I want to know how she died. And there's also a moment where Kajik notes, right? Because Susanna's like, do you even know how she died? And he's like, no. Do I want to know? I don't think I want to know. Should I know? I might know. Like, he goes through that, but she doesn't. You know, she absolutely has no desire to remember how she died. But I feel like it's going to play a big role in the story. And I suspect Alexi, because I have been betrayed by Victoria Aveyard in chapter 26 of Red Queen. And so I don't trust anybody that we're supposed to like.
Anyone can betray anyone.
Anyone can betray anyone.
But I also want to bring up, because we mentioned she gets under the water, she freaks out, she thinks she's drowning again, and Yulia picks her or drags her out, right? And there's clearly some kind of tension between them, because Yulia is the oldest of the Rusalki, or at least she's the one that's been there the longest, right? And clearly there was some kind of history there, maybe a situationship even. And the way that Yulia gets described, at least all of the attention that's focused on her, kind of gives me the idea that maybe she's also somehow supposed to be involved in this polycule, and whether Alexi is the Red Queen, the red herring, right? And Yulia's supposed to be the third, or I don't know, but it did set up Yulia very much so as another potential love interest, I think.
Yeah, I definitely got some like ex-lover or somebody that clearly had a crush on you, but I think Yulia is like 20 plus years old.
I don't know if they've ever mentioned ages, honestly.
They did. They said that the all of the nymphs range from 13 to 20 plus the years that they had been dead, and Yulia was the oldest.
That's true.
I
don't know if they ever mentioned Gisella's age. Was it?
It said that she would never turn 17.
So she's 16. Okay.
So she is either actually 17, because I hate when this is a trope that I really hate about the undead, where they're like, you know, I've been 17 for 500 years. No, you are 517 years old. Like, time still passes, you still celebrate that birthday. Your body is just not aging. Like,
and we know Gisella's been there for about a year, because she mentions that when she's bringing Tamara around, that she's been here for that long. She was just last year. She was just like Tamara.
Yes.
So I don't know.
So yes, she's 17. I believe Yulia is 20, and Yulia is also kind of like straight to the point and kind of rude about Gisella's plans, right? I have that quote too, because I felt that it was pretty cold. It's kiss and flirt with whoever you like. I don't care. I just think you're being an idiot. The living will always choose the living. That's how it works. No human is ever going to choose to be with a dead girl.
And I think she says that to her because she's jealous, because Gisela is flirting with all these people and not her.
Yes.
It read to me as spurred lover, but also as someone who's trying to protect her. Maybe there's more to the return to being a human legend than is really known, and maybe Yulia knows the full story and is like, well, because like the line that stood out to me in that I don't know if it was that particular scene, but it was around then, where where they're all sitting around the river, and one of the other Rusalki is Zamira. She's saying, One day it'll have been so long since you were alive that nothing left in you will remember being human.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that maybe if Gisela does come back as human, she's going to come back wrong. You know, she's not fully human at that point. She's been dead for a year. What does that mean for her as a person, both physically and mentally at that point?
Yeah. That's a good point. Like, will she become human with like water nymph powers, or will she just return to humanity? Like,
Mm.
nobody knows. That's a good point. There is another way that they can become human, and that's vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes up a couple of times where you can get vengeance for whatever's holding you back. And I'm like, is she just going to go on a rampage and kill all the people that didn't kiss her? Like, because
I think it's specifically on the person who killed you or caused your death for you to become a Rusauka, right?
And me.
So and like their family, I think.
Yeah.
So what if it turns out that Alexei is the one who somehow caused her death, whether intentionally, unintentionally?
In the teacup.
In the teacup, right?
Right in the teacup.
Maybe after she finds out like the kiss doesn't work, maybe she will go on a rampage, kill Alexei, his family, because they run the hyacinth spring, the one that makes you feel restful or whatever. I feel like that's a very good possibility, or maybe even Yulia ends up taking out her revenge on like the town or the people that have, or on specifically Kajik and Alexei for taking Gisela away.
Yeah, there's like a lot of possibilities for where that particular plot line can go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hate to keep backing up. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
But there's also, I noticed in the graveyard where Kajik is, he says he feels like this presence watching him. And so he finally shouts out, he's like, show yourself. And it turns out to be Gisela in the tree.
Yes.
However, at the very end, when Alexei steps out of the shadows and, you know, it's like, hey, I'm here. It says he's been listening to them. He's been listening to Gisela and Kajik.
Mm-hmm.
What if he was there the whole time and that feeling that Kajik had was actually Alexei watching him and not Gisela? It's just when he turned and saw her, that's who he thought was watching.
Ooh, okay, so what if like Alexei is part of like the other world, right? But like, but not completely, right? Because we're all pretty certain it's Alexei that rescues her after Kajik kidnaps her, and he erases the chalk line. And I feel like if he were like a nymph or a water spirit, he wouldn't be able to do that. So maybe he's somewhere in between, or
he does have special chosen one eyes. So
yes, what if he's a drowner that got his humanity back?
Oh, that's because I do think that Alexei does have some kind of inkling about the magical world. Mm-hmm. Because when he comes in and he rescues Gisela, who's turned into a frog at this point,
yes,
you know, he says, "I'm not trying to hurt you. You can't stay here. Let's get you back outside where you belong." And then as he drops her off at like a safe place by the water, he goes, "There, off you go. I'd stay away from town for a few days if I were you. Don't let Kajik catch you again." And he goes on to even say, "You should find some water. You don't want to dry out."
Yes.
Which absolutely is like, now boy knows that she's one, a Rusauka, and two, something about magic, right?
Absolutely.
And she's all just like, he doesn't know I was a frog.
Yeah.
I was like, no, he does. He definitely does.
He does. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Gisela being a frog. Gisela being a frog, going into the spa and going directly to the men's room to watch everybody get undressed, looking for the guy that she wants to flirt with, because in this weird, twisted Cinderella part of this story, apparently the only way for her to realize who her prince is to look at the wiener. Like, she just...
she just has an appreciative eye, that's all.
Yeah.
doesn't she like close her eyes for like a good portion, and she's just like, "Well, it doesn't hurt to look."
Yes.
Yeah.
First she's like, "Oh, I shouldn't look." "Oh, wait, I totally should. It won't hurt anybody." I'm like, "Oh my god, you little creep." And then Kajik catches her a second time, and he just launches on her with a waste paper basket. Like, oh,
I
what did he
actually thought that bench was going to be a sauna, and that they were going to turn it on, and like she was going to
Oh.
start drying out. I was like, "Oh, tell me that!" And then like something closes over her. I'm like, "Okay, it's not a sauna."
All the guys leave, right? And then she transforms back and she's completely naked. And Kajik is just like, oh, why? Why? Why?
Just clutching his pearls and trying to both turn away and make sure she doesn't escape at the same time.
Right? He's like, don't escape, but cover your boobs. Like, what is happening? The awkwardness, because
it's so good.
but the level of comfort, right? Because she didn't want to change back into a girl when Alexi picked her up as a frog, because she was like, oh, I would just be naked. That's so weird. But in front of Kajik, she's like, whatever, here I am.
I think it's because she said like some people get awkward about it, so she didn't want to scare him, like the human off, the mystery man off. But she thinks she doesn't care about Kajik, so it's like, let's play with him. Let's, see how he handles me being naked.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the exact response that I have too, where I don't care about this person. I'll just be naked. No, that's so weird. That's just so weird.
I think it was more of a, I know that he is offended or scandalized by this, so maybe I can use that to escape. And then that, turns into him throwing a towel at her, and then them having a literal tumble in the locker rooms where they're elbowing each other and trying to get free of each other.
It's not that sort of tumble. It's,
exactly.
Tumble.
This little tumble in the locker room, I was like, are they gonna kiss? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like just sitting there like, now kiss, yes. That's when the deal comes up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And I feel like 10 chapters was a perfect amount of time, because here comes the deal, and Gisella's like, look, you're constantly chasing me, I'm constantly teasing you. All I want is for someone to kiss me so I can become human again. And Kashi's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not true. It's a fairy tale. And she's like, well, what does it hurt you to help me? And this comes back to the rules of Kajik's magic, where he's not allowed to say no. There's two major tenets where he cannot accept payment, and he is not allowed to say no to somebody that asks him for help. And she asks him for help, and I'm like, aha, you're trapped.
The second that came up, the rules, I was like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. She's going to be like, I need your help, please. I'll wink, fluttering my lashes and pouting up at you.
Mm-hmm. And in trying to consider it, he says, he's like, okay, no more seducing innocent townsfolk, no luring, no tickling. I'm like, what has this girl been doing to this boy?
Well, because there was that one moment where he brought up, I forget his name, some throwaway character where, well, what about this guy who you had tried to drown in the river? And she goes, well, no, we were just having a tickle fight, and I didn't know that he couldn't swim.
Yes, there is that whole long list that Kajik gives to her, like, what about this guy? Oh, that was innocent. He fell. Like, he ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times,
Right. And I think it's just funny how the way she flirts with the humans, like she thinks it's harmless flirting and everything, and then they wind up going crazy and in these horrible situations where they could die and they don't even know it because they're just kind of like out of it. And I think that's interesting to see that she doesn't know that that's happening, but the humans can see it, like Kajik can see it. And he's like, and that's when he, he has the laundry list because he's seeing this. Like, there's that guy wandering around in the woods, dazed and confused. And she's like, oh, well, I was just flirting with him. Yeah, but
It's fine, right? Everybody likes to drown when they're in the early stages of a relationship. That's totally normal.
And then I guess she leaves to go back to the water, and they just go crazy and try to kill themselves.
Yep. And that's how Wojciech has so many teacups.
Because he's using the girls, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's probably using them by telling them the story, like, oh yeah, you can turn into a human if you go flirt with people, knowing full well that the minute the water nymphs turn their back, the humans go crazy and kill themselves.
Well, none of the other Rusauki really want to become human. I mean, all of them kind of say, like, why would you want to? You know, you're here, this is great, we have magic powers, we get little gifts during this week where they all kind of worship us, and
That's true.
They all seem more into the monstrous side of their being rather than wanting to go back.
That is true.
Yeah. So at the end, when Kajik finally is like, fine, I'll help you. I'll play matchmaker between you and whoever this guy is. And she's like, oh, he's right over there. And he calls Kajik's name. And Kajik's like, no, please, for the love of God, don't be this guy. And he turns around, and it's Alexei, which is a guy he's been crushing on.
He just gay panicked all over the cemetery.
Gay panic all over the cemetery. And Kajik and Gisela are both bi, right? Because he's admitted to fooling around with girls. She also admits to fooling around with girls. And he kind of like takes a pride in it. And there's a section where he describes her taste in guys. He's like, oh, she likes really tall guys and like tomboyish girls. But like the way that he says it is like, ugh, she just likes so many of them. and I'm like, do you just shame her? Like, what?
I just find it really funny because he says, oh, she goes for tall, broad-shouldered men. And he was previously described as 5'6", kind of scrawny, and small.
Well, you know, in literature, 5'6" is small.
Well, yeah, that's also the same height as her, but like the emphasis was she likes taller guys.
Yeah.
But he's the same height as her.
Yes. So obviously he's off the list.
I do want to go back to their sexualities and also their genders, because Gisela specifically, you know, when she's hanging out with all her Rusalki sisters, and she's describing Yulia. Yulia's got a flat chest. Yulia is sort of gender queer in that she sometimes says, "Oh, she wishes that she was an utopca, the
drowner,
the drowner, right?"
Yeah.
But she doesn't know if she wants to make the change. But there have been situations where Wojciech was like, when someone comes up to him and they're like, I'm not a drowner, I'm a Rusalka. And he goes, yeah, bet, okay, here's your magic, you know, coral comb that lets you do magic water stuff. But, you know, so he doesn't care that about how, you know, whether they're drowners or Rusalki or whatever. And Gisela goes on to say she also kind of feels like gender queer, and it really resonated with me because she says something along the lines of, I don't really know what my gender is, just that sometimes I don't feel like a girl. Me over here with my demi-girl, you know, my gender is left girl nun pizza, nun gender. And I just really like that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that bit of world building, but I didn't like how it was presented. Yeah, it's kind of lengthy and it felt very preachy to me. There's also a line in there where it's like, you know, the water goblin didn't feel that like gender was worth talking about or that it was anything important, and I'm like, well, that's good to know, but like I felt like it could have been said in a shorter period of time. Like it didn't need an entire page. Does that make sense?
I disagree, just on the fact that I really enjoyed having that sort of bit explained where the water goblin and all the spirits don't have a concept of gender or don't put as much emphasis on gender as opposed to maybe, you know, the binary outlook of humans.
Yeah.
And I I appreciated having that. You know, we're discussing the gender. We're setting up that we don't necessarily all feel, you know, boy or girl only,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just something that I really, in general, enjoy seeing in
Yeah.
fiction.
And I think I kind of agree with you both in a way, where I really enjoyed that they brought up that the water god was just like, yeah, it's cool if you're
Yeah.
if you're, a girl and you feel a boy, I'll respect that. But I feel that also saying like Gazella saying like, oh, stop, saying like, oh, there's sometimes where, I don't feel like a girl, blah 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 blah. It's like, is that really important to the story that Gazella does, like, does
Yeah.
that play out in a way? Is that going to play out in the future? Like, I don't know, because, she's flirting with all these people, and that makes sense, because she just wants, she likes males and she likes females and she just wants a kiss and to become human. But does the whole I don't feel like a girl sometimes and I don't know where my gender is sort of thing, is that important to the story?
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it with the length of time that was spent explaining that. Because like what like Maggie says, I'm all here for representation.
Absolutely.
I don't care that she's genderqueer, that she's whatever she wants to call herself.
Hmm.
But the length to which it went felt like an over explanation
Okay.
and very kind of preachy, where it was just like, these people don't care. Haha.
I have to disagree in
Mhm.
just the fact that, one, the representation and all of that, yes, but having that on the page, even explicitly, telling us, oh, she feels this way about her gender. Other characters are can be canonically transgender
Mhm.
or genderqueer, and it is the seeing of oneself on the page that matters. It doesn't matter if it's for the story or not. If it doesn't come up again, that's fine. But reading that passage was my favorite part of these chapters,
Mhm.
because I'm sitting there smiling to myself, kicking my feet, going, she feels the same way that I do. I see myself on this page now, where, just because of the, compulsory heteronormativity of all other fiction, with with your heterosexual, your cisgender, it's expected that you're gonna, that's the default.
Mhm.
When, this is challenging that. This is giving queer people a mirror to, you see, or a window into this story where you can really relate a little bit more to this character, or at least have your own gender affirmed in that kind of way.
Mhm.
And that's, definitely validated. And I apologize. I didn't mean that is
No,
important
no,
to the story. I just meant, is it important at that time? Could there have been a different time where she brings that up, where it wasn't
Mhm.
all at once with the whole gender thing? And I felt it like, it's kind of like, oh, everyone's, questioning their gender. Like, maybe we could have gotten that towards the beginning when we got to know her, or
So
maybe later in the story if it comes up, you know, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say like, oh, she shouldn't have said it, because is it really important to the
right?
story?
yeah, no, I don't think that it
No, no,
shouldn't
no.
be there. I just think it should be shorter. like like
I
I
think
would I would edit that information into a
right.
shorter, more to the point
I
uh
would
passage.
probably put hers at a different point in the story. Like, again, like maybe in the beginning when we're getting to know her.
Yeah.
Like, like maybe that could have been some of her background. Like, maybe, she was questioning herself and she was, sad and depressed.
Maybe I,
Also,
because the sad and depressed thing also comes like just a couple pages before her talking about her gender, Yulia's gender, and other, Rusalkis and Drowners' genders.
Hmm.
I feel like if we had it in earlier chapters, that would throw off the pacing, because we're put into the opening of this book with uh, Gisela being tasked with taking Tamara out for Green Week into the town. Right,
Hmm.
this is how we're supposed to be introduced to the location and the
Hmm.
magic and the people, right? And if we had just taken a pause where she's just like, yeah, I'm Gisela, I'm 16, I'll never be 17 again. I have, drunken pallid skin and long dark hair, and and also I'm gender weird. But I feel like that would have been,
and she does it all in front of a mirror.
Yeah, like she just woke up and she's doing this, right? It doesn't feel like it would have been a good place for it, because we need to get hooked first into the story before we can really start exploring the characters and learning about them. And yes, maybe it could have been shorter, maybe it could have been truncated a little bit, but I didn't mind the length, and it felt to me like they're trying to find a natural place to put it, because I also don't think it can be later on in the story, because the earlier we're sort of told about her gender and her sexuality, I think you don't want a sucker punch of that later on if it's something you don't know about. I mean, like, yes, if you're going into this book, you picked it up because it was it's a polyamorous romantasy, or a fantasy with romantic elements. I don't know how this is really going to be shelved, but you go in expecting queer characters, and you want to be able to set up who is who and how they see each other, so that you know how to see them too.
All right, so I have a question. If the other world doesn't care about genders and gender roles, why are the nymphs separated in female nymphs and male drowners?
I don't
honestly
think they care. I don't think that they don't care about gender. I think that they don't care
about the binary necessarily,
Yeah.
or how you refer to yourself. I think it is just a remnant of the Polish language. Everything in Polish is gendered. Everything about most of Central Europe's languages are gendered.
Don't forget, in France, the eggs are female, and the table is male, and I don't know why.
In German, dogs are male.
Yes, all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, and the way that you conjugate, or not really conjugate, but the way that you pluralize or how you refer to someone, it's very much dependent on gender.
You have shown me Polish conjugation tables.
Yep.
And they haunt my nightmares.
They are difficult. Even sometimes I mess it up all the time. But
could you imagine if Polish added in a non-binary level to that?
They're a little bit too conservative, I think, for that. But I know that there are some sort of
table would get bigger. It's already so big.
I know there's some sort of language where it is trying to remove the gender, or at the very least become gender neutral, or include gender neutral terms and nouns and verbs. I don't know them personally, but I know that they're there.
All right. Ending of the podcast. All right, so we're 10 chapters in, and I think this has been set up really well. Despite how I feel about certain preachy sections and I like the world that's being built, even if I don't like all of its presentation. Some of it is very like, bleh, this is my world. But I do like what's getting built. I'm intrigued by this story. We're already laughing, right? And I'm eager to see how Alexei plays out, because we all have these theories. And none of us trust him.
I do want to know what you guys what your predictions are for the next section we're going to be reading.
Oh, awkwardness. I predict a lot of awkwardness.
I for sure think that Kajik is going to just gay panic all over the place. Now that Alexei is part of the group, or at the very least is, involved now, or that he knows that he's involved. I think we're gonna get the fake out kiss at some point in the next 10 chapters.
Oh, this early?
I think so.
All right.
Maybe it'll be like the end of Act 2, like the end of the 10 chapters, where it's like, oh, she kisses Alexei or Kajik, and she doesn't turn back, and now she's lost. She doesn't know what to do next.
I think her and Kajik are gonna have a kiss and then not know what to do. Because they're coming out of this enemies phase where they're helping each other, and they're gonna have some weird sexual tension moment, and then both of them are gonna be like, what the hell was that?
I also think Wojciech is gonna get catch wind that she is somehow involved with Kajik now, because everyone's saying, oh, you shouldn't be getting nearby, you shouldn't be antagonizing him. And I think Wojciech is going to find out, or at the very least catch wind of it, and he's somehow going to either blackmail her or be like, I will let you go, be a human again, because he's got her soul, and but you have to drown him. In exchange for your soul, kill him.
How very Little Mermaid of him.
We did make the reference that he's kind of like an Ursula.
We did.
Character.
I have a question. Was it explained how Wojciech gets those souls?
No.
I don't think it was, no.
Because if he just collects souls as they kind of like leave the body, it would be possible that he's got Kajik's grandparents' souls under teacups.
Well, maybe it has something to do with like the water nymphs and the drowners and stuff. Maybe if they drown in his waters,
that's what I think it is specifically.
And he grabbed them.
That's what I think it probably is, but it's not explicitly explained. So my headcanon now is that he's just like out there catching souls like fireflies, but in the teacups.
But there's also, he has that alliance with the air spirits or the forest spirits.
It's the forest spirit, Leszek. Yeah.
Yeah, the forest spirits. So maybe the forest spirits are also handing him some souls. So he's not grabbing them per se, but the forest people are. I mean, he's giving him some drowned souls. Who knows?
It was kind of explained that Jadek, the grandfather, died of fever, I think. I don't remember how Babcia died.
Babcia died
demon.
Yeah, she was fighting demons.
Oh, right.
She was rocking some real Mary Pogorlich energy and just miss you, my mom. Like some sassy grandma where it's just 82 years old and mowing her lawn kind of thing. I think that's also very shocking to Kajik because he saw her as being very strong, and so for her to have fallen in any way was weird. And also, if she went down fighting a demon, maybe it took her soul.
And also, didn't they say like Kajik, his powers were weakening because of a transgression? And he talks about like having faith, and his grandfather always saying like you have to have faith or whatever. And maybe he lost his faith after his grandmother died, and maybe that's why his powers weakened. Because he turned his back for maybe a week or two.
Do you realize he really only calls on his faith when he's frustrated? Like
around her.
Yeah, it's almost always around Gisela, and it's always like, oh, heaven help me. Like, or there is one part where he's just trying to like calm himself down because she's so annoying, and he's just like, heaven has a plan, heaven has a plan, heaven has a plan, heaven has a plan, heaven has a plan.
And we also haven't seen him exercise anything so far.
No, we did. He exercised a Chadnik in the alley at one point on his way to the spot because it snuck up on him. He grabbed it and then he got rid of it, right? But I'm thinking because Babcia was very much about you have to have faith. Our powers come from heaven, right? But Jadek was the one who was like, but what about the spirit, right? And like he's sort of trying to push. What if it's spiritual power? What if you think about the spirits a different way, and what if the powers, because it was at some point mentioned like, oh, it's very similar to witches who got their power from the nature spirits, right?
Right, and he specifically distinguishes himself from witches because he's like, but witches can do whatever they want with their power, where he has rules about it.
No, that's a misconception. He's such a witches do have guidelines and rules and everything, and I mean there's different rules for different witches, but
Yeah,
Well, we know that both of them are pretty unreliable narrators at this point because they
Yes,
have
they are.
such varying views about the details of what's going on. So it could just be that he thinks that they don't have rules, but maybe he just doesn't understand them. Maybe even his own rules are arbitrary, and it's, we don't know the extent of the source of his power or what's going to happen if they ever, if he switches from his faith in the heavens to faith in the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not to get into like religion and all that, but I also think it's just maybe the teachings of the religion, because a lot of, religions that believe in God will be like, oh yeah, witches, they're doing the work of Satan, they're fear mongering and all that stuff, and it's not the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, those heathens, worshiping Satan. It's like, heathens don't believe in Satan for the most part. So
Right. Because Kajik also specifically calls out pagan rituals and how similar they are to what he does, right? And Babcha and Father Pavel, the priest, they had beef, right? So I feel like that further distances Kajik's power from God, from the heavens, and it is this, maybe it is from the spirits.
But I don't, because you can believe in God and witchcraft and believe in God and do this and that and the other thing. It doesn't mean you're any less of, a believer in God. So I think maybe, So I think maybe he's confusing himself, because he could definitely be like, no, I believe in God and I get my powers from God. This is just the path that God called me to. And instead he's going, well, maybe it's spirits, because, who knows? I don't know. But
we'll find out next time.
They're not making sense. That didn't make sense. That didn't make sense.
That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Join us next time for chapters 11 through 20 of This Fatal Kiss. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode or interview, and make sure to leave a review of the show. If you can't get enough books in your life and your TBR has reached astronomical heights, then join our Discord community, where you can get exclusive excerpts, meet other book nerds, and have the chance to sit in on our interviews live. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook and hosted by me, Jessica Mary. Special thanks to all of our amazing listeners, community members, and supporters. Until next time, my little Libronauts, this is Jessica Mary, Leigh, and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you all to stay booked all night.